welcome to this episode of Conversations on Congruency. I am Tania, your congruency coach, and today we will explore the relationship between courage and agency, two very interesting words. And I have here Courtney Harris. I'm so happy to have you here, Courtney.
Thank you, Tania. So happy to be here.
Yes, you are the perfect person to explore this conversation because you, as a life coach for teens and parents, you help these families to find peace and ease during these transitional times. And there's a lot of courage and agency involved in the process, right?
Very true. Very true.
So I'll tell you just a little bit of what's going on in Conversations on Congruency and in my Facebook group, Own Your Decisions. So every month we explore a theme, and then in October, during this month, the theme is courage. So Conversations on Congruency is it's a conversation, as the name says it, to find ways that we can practice this courage, or that we can acknowledge how we practice courage in our everyday lives. And well, for people who are watching, thank you so much for watching. I want to tell you that I just love Courtney. I met her. When I met her, we connected in an entrepreneurship Facebook group, and I feel we have built so many things together. We have created very interesting together so far. And Courtney, thank you again for being here. And let's start by what does agency mean to you?
Well, it's a really good question, and I actually had asked this on my Facebook page a couple of weeks or months ago or something, and not very many people responded. But Tania, you responded, and a few other people, and I responded, with what I'm thinking. But I think it's very curious, before I share my definition, I think it's curious that many people didn't respond, because there's other words that I might put out there that get a lot of hits, but I don't think that the word agency is as used or understood as I believe it needs to be. So I'm glad that we're in this conversation. And so to get to my definition, the way that I think about agency is the understanding that we have the power to create change in our own lives and in our world. And, when I use the word power, I use that really intentionally, and not about power over others or power it's not power over others. It's power meaning a force to make change, right? And so many things in our world are forces. The weather is a force. Our internet is a force. But when we have this force of power, with this power of knowing who we are, this power of knowing that we can create change in our own lives, that's what agency really means to me, and the part of it that feels really important to me.
Yeah, when you say the power to create change, the first thing that comes to my mind is Dr. Martin Luther King's quote, we have the power to effect change. So, and I think that agency actually comes from that context, from the social justice context, where countries, groups, and individuals claim the right to make decisions about their destiny, about their lives and their future.
Right.
And I love how you phrase it, because it is a power that, yes, I think it exists inside us, right? It's like our conviction that we are capable of creating the circumstances where we can thrive.
Yes, and it's interesting because I even think I would argue that it's our responsibility to know our agency. That, and especially as you bring up the social justice background, I believe that it's our responsibility to understand what is within our power and that means becoming self-aware. That means understanding history and systems of oppression and understanding, it does involve quite a lot. And it doesn't have to look just one way, but I do believe that we have this responsibility to understand, what role we're playing in our lives, in our life, and in our family systems, and in our neighborhoods and our communities. And so, yeah, I'd even make that argument.
Yes, no, I agree with you, because bringing it back to our, like family, everyday life conversation, when you are aware of your own capability of shaping your life, and you are responsible for it, like you are accountable of considering what makes sense to you, what will bring well-being to you,
Yes.
and you create it, then it's kind of funny, and it, like, we could explore this, but the thing is that when you do it, you actually empower your loved ones to do it as well, because
Yes.
you're not making decisions for them. You are modeling, and specifically as a parent, you are modeling how to create your own well-being in a way that makes you also capable of helping others to create it.
Yes, that's beautifully said.
So I don't know how, in this case, how can we help our children, specifically our teenagers who are discovering this agency? How can we help them in their way, in their process?
Yeah. Well, I like that you're asking about teenagers. And so my answer is really, I often use very similar strategies with younger children that I would use with teenagers, because the thing is, and it's the same thing that works for many of us as adults, right? The things that work for broad age brands. Yes. So what I would say to that is, yes, the first point is modeling. So modeling for our children what it means to take agency in our own lives. And so that could mean, anything from showing your children that you vote, to showing your children that you're going to practice self-care by taking a quiet moment and reading a book or taking a bath. That can mean that you're modeling it by, talking about what your job means, what your career and your interests in the world mean. Things like that, right? That's a starting point, is the modeling. The second thing that's really important is having conversations and having systems in the family that give everybody an opportunity to have voice. And so, this comes from many parenting books, and books about families will talk about family meetings. But I think that's a really beautiful example, a concrete example of what this can look like. Just a family committing to every Sunday night or every Monday night having a conversation over dinner where everyone gets the opportunity to bring up problems or solutions or ideas. And that container allows your children and teenagers to know that their ideas are meaningful into the whole family, and that they are co-creating along with the parents this idea of what family even is and what it means.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Yes.
It's a really big one. And going along with that, family meetings are one system, but I would also recommend looking into and considering creating agreements with your children. So this is creating agreements about anything from limits on screen time to what an ideal bedtime is, to even, what the roles and responsibilities are for cooking or cleaning, anything that's happening in the home environment that basically you don't want it to be all on the parent, right? Parents should not be doing everything. First of all, you'll be exhausted, you will be resentful, and your kids are not going to be learning skills that they need to learn. And so agreements and coming to these agreements together is a really important process for children understanding their agency in their family life, and even in their ability to take control for themselves, in the sense of, when a teenager works with their parent to set a limit about technology, ultimately they feel more empowered because the decision was not done to them. It was done together in partnership. So those are kind of like 3 starting points for agency and families.
Yes, I love them. As a mother, I like, I've made a point of being aware of, opening that space to my kids. They're younger, tweenish. But I've noticed that sometimes if I am very busy, like if I am very task oriented, these weeks that you have like the school and work, and you need to shop for groceries, and you have the extracurricular activities and the birthday parties. It's like this week just crowded with activities that I get into this super pragmatic state of mind.
Yes.
And I forget to ask them. It is not something that I do willingly. It's not intentional, but it's just that I get so stuck in organizing the logistics that I forget to make them part of it. So we have this agreement that, they are very different. Both of them have their personality. So our agreement is that when they are like tired of me making decisions for them, like when they're fed up with that, they ask for the space to do it.
Yes.
In a way that they know that I will respond, so we don't have any conflicts, we don't have any fights. But it's like sometimes, and this is my oldest, that she's very aware of what she feels. So she's like, sometimes it feels good for you to make decisions for me because I'm tired or I don't really know what to do. But sometimes I want to make them. And she was very clear on making that point. So we set up an agreement that, by the way, for people who are watching these, we achieved this level of communication because we have been working with Courtney. So just FYI,
thank you.
Have her close because she really helps to establish this connection, to just see your kids as human beings, not as an extension of yourself, not as a child, like without any capability of exercising agency, but as growing human beings that are acquiring their tools.
Yes.
So thank you for this. And
yes, well, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, you're welcome. And as you were speaking, I was also thinking of entrepreneurs. So there's a point where we start making the decision of hiring people, right? We find help. And it's kind of similar to parenting. Like, we need to know that there's training involved. But I feel that we need to know that the more intentional we are with that training and with that modeling, the better it will be on the long term, because we will be allowing our team to exercise their agency. Even if it's in the realm of, like business operations. So I find that agency is relevant in every single role of our lives.
Totally.
And as life itself, if you stop exercising your agency in one of these roles, you give up your decision-making power in most
right. That's very interesting. Yes. And actually, as you're sharing that, one thing that's coming to mind, I don't know if I have it's not really an answer, but more of a curiosity, is the connection between agency and knowing and naming our gifts. Because our gifts, meaning, the things that we do more naturally or seamlessly, or that just kind of flow from us, right? And I think for entrepreneurs, considering the aspects of our work that are where our gifts shine, that's the part that we might want to do. And then some of the other parts are where we may outsource, or where we may, bring on team members. And so I think that's actually really interesting, that when we mine and discover and name our gifts, then we can take agency for that. And also in our agency, we allow some things to not be where we put all of our energy. And I think that there's something to be said about that part of agency, of letting some things go and knowing that we don't have to hold on to it all and grasp it all and do it all. So I don't know, that was just kind of clicking as you were sharing that about teams and even in families, right? You know, if there's somebody that loves cooking, that is potentially the path of least resistance, and then they can take their agency and the ability to create nourishing meals for their family while someone else can step into a different role of support. And you know, I think like you're saying, it's so many different systems can run and operate this way.
Yes. I feel it's ubiquitous, you know, because I was in a conversation with a client last year, I think it was, and there was this moment where when she said like, oh, you know, that aha moment that I love and I feel very honored to witness, where she was, okay, I know that the only way that I can be responsible for my life, for what's happening in my life, is by actually making the decisions that create those outcomes. So she was in this conflict because she was having to face very challenging situations, very frustrating situations. But she did not make the decisions that create those situations. They were kind of given to her by circumstances, being the one, like the most important one being a woman, because like men were deciding for her. So the thing is that the moment that she realized that owning her life would allow her to enjoy the outcomes and at the same time be responsible for what happened. Like, okay, I made a mistake. I can live with this, you know, I can learn and I can move forward. But when we find ourselves in frustrating situations or in situations that are not creating any joy for us or any hope, it's hard to accept them and to move forward if we haven't made the decisions that brought us there.
Yes.
And I feel like agency, that's agency to me.
Yes.
You know, as an individual, as a group, as a country, like that's where it comes from, which brings us to, what do you think is the relationship between courage and agency?
I mean, what first comes to mind as I hear you ask that is that when we are plugged into our agency, you know, when we recognize that we do have the ability to make change, we do have power to make change in our lives and the world, then we can step into courageous decisions. And again, that's courageous decisions within our own life, right? It can be a courageous decision to say no to something that you normally say yes to, but you know that saying no is the right thing, right? It can be small things. It can start with like just here with myself, that can be courageous. And then of course it can echo out and be much bigger. But I do think that when we know that it is our responsibility to find and use our power intentionally, then we're going to be more courageous almost just naturally.
Yes, yeah. I agree. Like the more we acknowledge our own courage, the more courageous we can be, right?
Yes. It's so interesting, the power of naming, kind of like the story with your client, that just owning your process is already just you're building a foundation of power and strength. And, you know, I think I'm using some words that sometimes can tend to be associated with maybe some negative connotation, right? Of abuse of power or strong, meaning never crumbling or never falling or that there's no sensitivity, but really I believe that we can be all of those things at once. We can be strong and still cry, and we can be all these things. So I don't want it to sound like the idea of building some sort of facade that doesn't experience challenges.
Oh, no. Yeah, I agree with that. words are tricky, right? And
So
we
tricky.
use words in a way, in a context, and then we are in another context and they have different
Yes.
connotations. I do believe it's important to find your words. Like
Yeah.
when each one of us finds the word that makes sense,
Yes.
because it sounds nice, because it describes what you want to say. Like, this is my language, and I can share it with you so you can understand me. I don't expect you to actually use my language,
Right.
only if it makes sense to you. But yeah, I get what you mean, both on the, like, the different connotations that words can have. And I also agree with courage as the discovery of our power and our strength. When you were talking about that constructive power, I was thinking of a tree. You know, like, I find it, I actually have a whole visualization exercise dedicated to trees, because
Awesome.
I feel they're like the symbol exactly of power and strength. So it's this, first of all, the strength to grow against gravity. That amazes me.
Amazing. Yes.
Right? Like, it's just, wow.
It is.
It's a living being that cannot move and yet is strong enough to defy gravity and grow upwards. Like, the whole idea is just, wow.
That's amazing. Yes.
Right? So that is strength to me. Like, that energy that keeps you growing despite of the forces that want to keep you down.
Yes.
And then power. When I think power, I think of, the trees, the very wide trees that have these rings. So I might be wrong, but what I feel I learned when I was a little child, that if you counted the rings,
Yes.
you could know how old that tree was, because every year they grow like a new ring, right? So when I think of power, I sometimes I come to that image, the image of the rings, like the image of how many layers of experiences have brought you to this place of beauty and magnificence. Even if you have scars, because every ring is different. Every ring has a different color. The ring can tell you if it was like a dry year, or if it rained a lot, or if the tree was sick of like these fungi and stuff the trees have.
Yes.
And I feel like as people, we also have those rings, and that's our power, the power of seeing all these layers.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point, that it's actually probably much of our power comes through struggle, even, right? That challenges that we have and the situations that kind of push us to our growth edge, those are actually the places where we are growing the most strength and the most kind of transformational skills or just ideas and beliefs about ourselves too come through the more challenging times. So I think that's a beautiful recognition that there is so much strength and power in experience, especially when we're living in a way that is with intention. It doesn't mean we have to get it perfectly, but if we're awake, then if we're awake to our life and setting intentions and being present with ourselves along the way, then we are growing our power and we are growing our strength. And I think just that act in and of itself is courageous, because it means that we're showing up on the bad days, even if it means we just have to say, I'm having a bad day, but we're still there with ourselves. So I think it takes much more courage to face the whole roller coaster of life than it does to just, shut it down and only see what we want to see.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love that you say that when you're awake, because this is a common conversation for us, for you and I, because we are very active politically. We're activists. We're having a lot of conversations about many things that matter to us. One, I don't know if it's comment or challenge that I get from people who not necessarily share my views, is that this awaken. I'm quoting because that's how they do it. Like being awake feels exhausting. And I try to explain to them that it is intense. It can get intense. I won't lie about it. But it gets as intense on the beauty as it gets intense on the ugly. So and I would like to bring back the conversation to families. I will ask you a question about this because, intentional parenting or intentional entrepreneurship or intentional living opens these new nuances on feelings and experiences and emotions that are sometimes overwhelming. But I feel that they're so worth it at the end of the day.
Yes. Actually, one of my yoga teachers many years ago, her name's Christina Sell, and a comment that she made is that this yogic journey, which is essentially the journey of self-study, is the hard path to the easy life. So that there's much more freedom, right? And knowing that we're living in truth. And that's the easy part, but it takes this hard work of staying awake. And yes, like you said, it is exhausting, right? To be intentional, to just practice your agency every day, it can be exhausting. And this is why we also have to maintain self-care. But ultimately what we're creating is the easy life, the life of truth, and the life that we have much less resistance to because we are present and in deeper acceptance, and we grow that over time. It's not something that one day we just say we are completely all of these things. It's a process. So yeah, and it actually reminds me too of my time in the classroom. In a particular classroom management strategy, there's this quote that you take time to make time. And I often think of that in parenting too, where it does take time for you to ask your daughters, to stop and say, well, how do you think we could solve this problem? Right? You stop and you pause, and it takes a little extra time than you solving it on your own, maybe. But then you're making time later. You're buying time because they're going to know how to solve problems, and they're going to be doing all kinds of they already are, right? But when you offer them that time to begin with, they are stepping into it much more as they continue to grow. And that buys you time in the sense that they'll already have this beautiful skill, and you've taught that, and now you just get to witness it and enjoy it.
Oh yes, that is beautiful. And I think we take for granted knowing that we can make decisions in our lives. But it is not something to take for granted. Like where I grew up, the way I grew up, I didn't know I could make decisions for myself. Nobody told me. And nobody opened that possibility either. I somehow found it for, chances. So it is, especially with our daughters, with our sons, like letting them know that they have agency on their lives, that they get to decide how they want to live. It's a beautiful gift. And as you say, helping them to learn how to do it, because it's not like training. It's a lot of experimentation and a lot of loving guidance and a lot of, come, I'll hug you while you cry because it didn't work out. And a lot of celebrating that it worked out the way they wanted.
True.
That to me is the best thing we can give to our kids. Just the gift of agency and the love to accompany them in their journey.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Yes. Oh, thank you for this conversation, Courtney. I love it.
I know. I love it
We
too.
need to do
Thank
this
you.
more often.
It is true. It's so true. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so before we leave, where can we find you? Please let us know. I will definitely include it in the description of the video, but let us know where can we find you? How can we work with you? Please.
Awesome. Yes. So you can find me at CourtneyHarrisCoaching.com on Instagram and Facebook, Courtney Harris Coaching. And yes, if anybody is interested, I do offer complimentary discovery calls. You know, that is a gift to any parents that are interested in hearing about my work and have potentially teenagers or young adults that are in their journey of self-discovery and would like to have a partner that is not a family member and is not a teacher, you know, a neutral party to support in the journey. So I'd love to offer that to anyone who's watching.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
You know, you can find me in Facebook, my page, Tania Gerard, Congruency Coach. You can join us at Own Your Decisions and get to practice all these explorations during the month. During this month, we're exploring courage, but we have self-care, we have hope, we have everything that can help you to make confident decisions that will create sustainable well-being in your life. Thank you, Courtney, for being here. Thank you for watching and wishing you peace and happiness. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.